Let's start today by studying the teachings of our dear friend David Schwartz of blessed memory. Every week since he passed away, since he was killed fighting in Gaza, we've been studying his teachings every week. So what he writes about Parshas Tisah is absolutely beautiful and worthy for us to take to heart. So Parshas Tisah, so many things in it. We have the story of the golden calf, we have the festivals, we have the breaking of the tablets, we have the 13 attributes of mercy, we have the anointing oil, the ketoret, the incense. And what David chooses to focus on is the beginning of the portion, which talks about the mitzvah of the half shekel. The beginning of our portion, chapter 30, verses 12 through 16. And it's a very, very powerful message that he gives to us. He says, Ki Tisah is Rosh B'nai Israel. The word Tisah means, here it means count, but it probably means when you lift up the children of Israel with Kudehem, to count them, V'nasnu ish kofer nafsho Hashem. Everyone should give a kofer to Hashem, a ransom to God, bifkodotam. When you count them, v'lo yebam negef bifkodotam, so that there will not be a plague when you count them. Means say when you come to count the Jewish people, you have to do it in a specific way. Zeyinu, who's supposed to give this kofer, this ransom? Ko over apakudim, anybody who passes to the count, machatzin shekel mashekel kodesh, should give this half shekel of the holy shekalim, esrim geirah shekel. They have to give the 20 esrim geirah. The shekel is made up of 20 geirah, so you have to give half of it, machatzita shekel, half of that as an offering to God. Kol vera pekudim, who is going to be counted? Everybody from 20 years old, miben esrim shana v'mala yitain shemat Hashem. Everyone from 20 years old and up has to give a donation or this offering to God. The rich cannot give more than a half shekel. The poor can't give less than a machatzita shekel. To give an offering to God, to atone for your souls. And you shall take this money of the atonement from the children of Israel, and you shall give it to the service in the Ol Moed, and it'll be for the children of Israel a zikaron, as a memorial of Ne Hashem before God to atone for your soul. These are just the verses of the Torah about the mitzvah of the half shekel. Writes David that in this portion, B'nei Israel mitzuvim b'netinat machatzita shekel. In this passage, the children of Israel are commanded in the half shekel. The wealthy one cannot increase. The poor cannot give less. Every single one is commanded to bring specifically a half shekel. And one who violates this and says, I'm going to give 20 shekel, is actually in violation of a prohibition of the Torah. You have to give exactly half. And we need to understand, what's this whole concept of a half shekel? What's the uniqueness of it being specifically half? What's so special about it being specifically half? Really, writes David, why doesn't everybody, wouldn't it be more appropriate for everybody to give a complete shekel? Wouldn't that be better? And really, this is not a lot of money. This is a small amount of money. Right? So if you tell everybody, okay, give $1 instead of 50 cents, what's the difference? Why specifically a half shekel? The importance of giving a half shekel, chashivut ota nitina kogdola, it's so big that the Maimonides brings this for a special law that even a poor person should sell his clothing in order to pay this half shekel. Everybody's required to give the half shekel. Then Nitivot Shalom explains that the whole concept of the half shekel is to show to a person that by himself he's only worth half. I just want to pause from David's writing and say, actually, even though we're doing what David says, I want to share another thought here because it enhances this idea. I saw the same idea in this book I was given last night, hot off the presses, a biography of Leonard Goodman, our old friend Leonard Goodman. And it was written by his daughter, Hannah, Ann Benjamin. And she writes a similar idea that when her mother passed away at the funeral, she said, why a half shekel? To teach us that alone we are not a whole person, and that we become whole by acknowledging our deficiencies and by celebrating the special qualities of our fellow man. So she went in a slightly different direction than David, but basically the first part of it is exactly the same. To teach us that alone we are not a whole person. We become whole only by acknowledging our deficiencies. David said something similar. That's in this beautiful book about Leonard Goodman. I'll have it at the yeshiva this afternoon if anybody wants to take a look at it. Very powerful book. So, says David, going back to the Netivot Shalom, to show that a person by himself is not complete. He's only worth half. This is what a person needs to remember, that in this world he can never achieve perfection. In order for a person to achieve wholeness, this is what the point of David, where he goes a different direction than Hannah Benjamin, is that a person needs to know Kedei she'adam yagia l'shleimut hu tzarich litchaber l'klal hatzibur. The only way to achieve wholeness, this goes back to a theme we started with from after David's words about his mother. In order to achieve wholeness, we need to connect to something much bigger than us, to the communal need. And as a result of that, there's also a need for communal prayer and for many commandments which others are dependent upon and which the whole community depends upon. So basically, David is arguing that the reason why it's a half shekel is to teach us that we can only achieve, on our own, we can't achieve our goal. We can only achieve it by committing ourselves to something much greater than us, to the community, by living for the community. And this is being written by a person who, 3 years after he wrote this, gave his life for the community. Rav Asher Weiss, he quotes him, explains the word machatzit. The actual word machatzit has in the middle of this word, this half shekel word, machatzit means half. The middle letter is the letter tzadi. And that hints to the concept of tzedakah, charity. And the two letters next to it are chet and yud, and they spell to live, meaning to say that if one gives charity, they're going to live. On the other hand, the letters farthest away from it spell mate, spell death, mem tuf. And we see that if you don't give charity, God forbid you will die. Now, David was very charitable, and he was killed in Gaza. So I want to talk about that at the end. But first, I want to share with you what he wrote. He said the Gemara in Baba Basra, and tomorrow we're going to finish Baba Kama and start the next tractate. Gemara in Baba Basra, 11a, tells us an incredible story about the importance of charity. He said about Binyamin HaTzadik, Binyamin the righteous one, that he was appointed to be in charge of a charity collection. He was in charge of a collection that collected charity. And one time a woman came before him and it was a famine, and she said to him, Rebbe, give me some money. He said, I swear, I can't. There's nothing. So she said, Rebbe, if you don't give me money, this woman and her 7 children, meaning say me and her 7 children, this woman spoke about herself like that. Isha, this woman and her 7 children will die. We're desperate. He stood up and he supported her not from the communal charity box, but from his own money. Soon after that, he grew sick and he was about to die. The angel said to God, Master of the universe, you said whoever upholds one life from Israel, it's as though he upholds the whole world. And here Binyamin Atzadik caused this woman and her 7 children to live. And are you going to kill him at such a young age? Immediately God tore up the decree. And they added on to Binyamin Atzadik's lifetime 22 years. Now it seems like such a random number, 22 years. So how do we get to 22 years? How do we get to that number? So for this, we need the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon brings a beautiful explanation how we get to the 22 years that are added on to Binyamin Atzadik. The Gemara in Sota says that if a woman committed this sin for which a Sota is accused of, that she faces a divine punishment, and only God knows if she sinned. But even if she sinned, we suspend her judgment. Any judgment we suspend for 3 months. She lives in a suspended judgment for 3 months. The Gemara says, how do you get a merit? The Gemara in Baba Basra says that if you give money to the poor person, you get 6 blessings. But if you give him just words and you appease him and you encourage him, in addition to giving him charity, you also encourage him, you get a total of 11 blessings. So therefore, when we take the fact that when we take each merit, hold on one second. It's a little bit of difficult math. When we take each merit that he did, he gave her his charity. So let's see. He takes this charity. What is that? So he takes it. We take each blessing and we multiply it by 3 months, because each time we gave her money, we get 3 months. So we're going to see that therefore he upheld the punishment by 33 months, because that's 11 merits, because he appeased her. So by giving her this charity, he got an extra 33 months to live, because he didn't just give her the charity, he also inspired her the words. However, the angel said a woman and her 7 children, which means to say we have to take the 33 and multiply it by 8. And what do we get that? We get 264 months. And that equals, when you take that and divide it by 12, that comes to 22 years. And that's why Binyamin the righteous lived for an extra 22 years. So these explanations are sweet, but they're trying to tell us the importance of charity. Okay, so I read this, first of all, before we stop and take questions. I read this, and 2 things obviously come to mind. First of all, David's basic point is that the reason why it's a half shekel is to teach us that we have to live for the greater good, not just for ourselves. And he lived for a greater good and he died for a greater good. That's very, very, very clear. And then he has this idea that if one gives charity, they're going to be blessed. Now, David was incredibly charitable. He comes from a very, very charitable family, incredibly charitable, and yet he died. So he died very young. So it's like the opposite of this story. We have to say that when it says you'll be blessed with life, it means that you have eternal life, that you're living part of something so much greater than you. But the same way we started our discussion today by quoting the teachings of a person who died at a very young age in the Warsaw Ghetto, but he's still alive. That means to say, if we live our life in the right way, we'll be part of a life that's always alive, because the values we lived for, will live on. That's the teaching. That's the teaching of David on this week's portion and the parasha of Tisah. So let me just stop the recording for a moment and see if anybody has any questions.